There we go. All right. So welcome everyone to the webinar. It's great to see the interest in this topic. Those of you, I think many of you are probably on here because you are around Michael and I around Facebook and various Facebook groups. And so you see our behavior in some of these groups and our input and comments around the topic of coaching and professional coaching and what coaching is. And so you're probably familiar to some degree to some of that. And most everybody here is also familiar with us from the point of view of one or more spiritual teachings that you may be very strongly grounded in. A lot of us probably in the teachings of Sydney Banks and the Three Principles. So we know each other kind of from those communities, and so this particular webinar came up as a lot of people who come across some of these teachings and understandings that impact them personally. And by the way, and it's no wonder that coaches do, because coaches are usually immersed in a lot of self-awareness, personal growth. This tends to be something that people who are in coaching tend to do for themselves. And so, Michael and I, as we looked at this, and we thought there is something around coaching mastery, which is the form. It is a form of a way of interacting with people called coaching. And then how does that harmonize with what you know that you have realized, the truth you have come to see about the nature of life, the nature of reality, your own as a human being, your own potential and possibility. There are things that you have come to see as a result of certain teachings. And so how do these two things harmonize with each other? What we sometimes are more familiar with is where from a seeing of something true, a dismissing or devaluing of everything in form after that. Oh, it's just illusion. These are just forms. It's all created. It doesn't need to be. And it's all made up, right? It's all made up, right? And so as a dismissing of all of that, and so because now that we've seen the light, all we need is the light, right? And if some of you have gone out and attempted to communicate and share the light with people who have been less than grateful that you are there to save them, then maybe that's also part of what interested you in this webinar. But any quick intros, maybe Michael, for anyone who doesn't know us, a quick intro, and then.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Michael. I've been fell into the 3P understanding, or had it revealed back in 2015. And it made it was a transformative experience, bar none. And as Dominic was just alluding to, I thought, yay, I'm going to share this with everyone and everyone will be so thankful. And that didn't work so well. And is the short story. And, luckily I had met Dominic at this point and expressed an interest in coaching. And I think, can I tell the little story about the little video story? So I've told this story a bunch of times, but it really encapsulates this quite nicely, is that I had done a coaching demo before I had done any real coach training. And I asked Dominic if he could evaluate my coaching demo, and he refused and said, well, there's nothing here for me to for me to give you feedback on, because you don't know what coaching is. So on one hand, I had the haha moment that I wanted to share with everyone. And on the other hand, I had no idea what coaching was. And I think it was probably 2 days, maybe 3 days later, it turns out there was a workshop. This is about 2 years ago now. So from that first coaching exposure to, continual training over the last couple of years, which has, so far, I'm a certified solution-focused brief coaching coach through the Canadian Center for Brief Coaching. I'm doing a program right now through the University of Toronto. And I currently have an ACC, which is an associate coach credential through the International Coach Federation. And the last thing I'll say is that, I know that at times I've probably been controversial about my passion in bringing coach training and formal coach education in harmony with the three principles. And I think a lot of what Dominic and I are going to be talking about, not just today, but in the coach training and mentorship, is going to be focused on that. How's that? Fairly succinct, I hope.
Yeah, awesome. Dominic Scafidi and I, my journey was prior in, kind of corporate world. And I was in that for 20 years. And then I left and kind of went out on my own. And the beginning of it, I said, oh, I'm a consultant. I'm an HR consultant, because the last corporate role I held was a VP of HR. But very quickly, I discovered the part that I really loved, which was because I was in HR from a passion for people, the potential that we have inside, like that. And it really came out of my own sort of personal growth that I was following. And so coming out of it, it became very clear that, well, wait a minute, I really don't care about everything in HR. That's not really my interest. My interest is really around people, potential, and all of this. And so it just became clear within a year or so, it became clear this is about coaching. And then once that became clear, and by the way, this is well before, three principles or any of this. So once that became clear, I saw I'll need to be trained in this, or I'll need to understand this. So I pursued and got an executive coaching certification and all of that, credentialed through the International Coach Federation. And I really began to sort of practice coaching, the art of coaching and all of that. Later came the three principles. And then in that sort of greater understanding that is provided from that perspective, I could start to see some things about coaching that were explained from an understanding of the principles. And of course, that has to be the case, because if coaching is unlocking, helping to release potential within people, and then you understand what three principles is about, which is quite a description of what's true about people, then the two things must be in harmony, right? It just makes sense. They must be. And my coaching perspective is pretty, I don't know what the word is, but it's pretty pure, let's say. So as pure as you might say some people are about the principles, when you say there's, hey, it's inside out, it's never the other way, right? Like, so there's a pure sort of understanding when you're grounded in, teachings of Sydney Banks. I have a pretty pure understanding about what coaching is and is not, right? And so there is something in the form of coaching and what that is. And what I've come to see is the two of these things are very harmonious, very harmonious. Coaching would be, for me, the best, most pure expression of being grounded in an understanding like Sydney Banks 3P. If you were going to interact with another person,
best language, eh?
Yeah, this is a good language, and this is a good kind of approach, is that way that coaching approaches it. Yeah. So that's yeah, that's where I'm coming from in this. Oh, and I'm a master certified coach. So this, it's been, I guess I achieved that credential maybe a year ago or less. I can't remember. Maybe it's a year ago. And as a master certified coach, that is the highest level credential within the International Coach Federation. Now, when I started, my journey back in the beginning, I thought, oh, it's master certified coach. That's what I need to achieve. That's what the end of the journey is. What I discovered, and it was such a painful process in that achieving that credential, is that what I discovered is that credential means now you are a beginner on the journey to mastery. And it was quite a surprise to realize that this master certified coach puts you now at the beginning of a journey to mastery, right? Which will never end. Right? So in terms of what the art of this is.
That's such a neat thing to sort of bring to the table, Dominic, because I have a very strong martial arts background, and I coached for 13 years before I got into real coaching, in the fitness world and in nutrition and in martial arts. And, going from a white belt to black belt is like, it's a big deal, right? Learning form, learning technique. And then you get to black belt and you realize, now I can forget all of that and actually start to learn. So I think that that fits rather seamlessly in my experience as well, Dominic. I mean, as an ACC, see, I had it a little different. I had, you as a master coach, you were the 10th Dan black belt. And I was giving myself a black belt because I have my ACC rather than giving myself a white belt and you a black belt. But, that's another conversation there. So anyway.
I've learned a lot actually from Michael's metaphors with martial arts, because that's been very helpful in kind of the understanding, because one of the things as Michael's gone through is he keeps relating it back to this, because Michael, you didn't say in your background too, you owned a gym, and there's
there's a little bit more to sort of my my journey to coaching, to pure coaching. Most of my life has been in one way, shape, or form dedicated to service. I mean, I've worked as everything from supply teacher to PSW, and a wide range of things in between. So I've always been geared, we'll call it, to the serving, to the helping field. But yeah, most recently, the last 13 years were as an owner of a CrossFit gym, actually one of the first 10 in Canada. So we were trailblazing there. And what a neat realization to see how, I was called a coach. And coach is a title that is inferred on you by someone else. It's not one that you claim for yourself. It's sort of, you earn that title of coach in the world that I was in because it's bestowed on you by others based on what they take from you. It's not something that you get given. So anyway, that was kind of neat. So yeah, my experience goes back a little bit further than I let on at the start here, but thanks for the reminder, Dominic.
Cool. As we go, you're welcome to use reactions, and then you'll see a hands up if anything we say or something you want to talk about. And feel free to take this in a direction, like pretty soon we'll want to do more of, really taking it in the direction of what you want to ask. So feel free to do that. In the meantime, how many people, and you could do this with a thumbs up or any other symbol, how many people are currently coaching, working with others in a coaching scenario, like that kind of thing? You may have clients either pro bono or,
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8. No, so
yeah.
8 or 10 maybe.
Yeah. And what about for for people who have had some sort of training or familiarity with, some sort of training about coaching or anything like that, where you've already done something like that, you've participated in that kind of thing? A few as well. Yeah, just checking. Okay, yeah. So not new to this. Yeah. Okay. Great. So, all right, just so we kind of see who's in and out, and I know quite common in our community. So this is you'll see in our title we talk about the harmony of coaching mastery and the three principles. So what I ran across a lot coming into 3P is not such harmony about coaching mastery and the three principles. So what I ran across was more coming in and experiencing people who were grounded in the three principles and incredibly excited about the insights and realizations that they had into the nature of reality, into their own nature, and into what's possible for the world from that understanding. And then saying, and now I'm going to coach others. Right? So, and then there were others who were coaches, and I find that this was not helpful. That there were many others, you know about them, they're very big names in the three principles, who were coaches in the past with intense training around coaching and who were very well regarded as coaches. Right? Having discovered the three principles, had this massive realization that everything that they had seen was a sham. It's like, oh my God, was I ever blind? Everything I ever learned about coaching, NLP, all of that stuff is suddenly dissipated into an illusion. It's just not needed, right? Which, yes. But so I took a different route. By the way, says some of you who know me with other things too, like the teachings of Abraham Hicks and stuff like that. The fact that I can hold that and three principles and non-duality and right? I can hold a number of things, right? So I guess the only part that was kind of like lucky for me was when I hit this fork in the road of understanding that, there is coaching, which was a particular way. And now there's three principles, which has, an amazing realization. As opposed to voting, and I picked one to be the winner while making the other one the loser and making it wrong. What I went for instead was the harmony. If the grounding, which by the way, I want to be clear, is the most important part, right? So the most important part is the grounding. That is what the realization and knowing you have of 3P or any other teaching, because that forms the basis of what you see in the world. Now, given the truth of that, any form can be explained by it. So if NLP works, if there is a, neuroscience and coaching and it works, like if any of that works, you would be able to understand how it works based on this grounding. And so I found enormous value from following what's in harmony. Wow, that works. How come that works? Given what I know about the truth. So why is it that that works given this, right? So as I would look for the harmony within it, I found incredible value. It impacted the coaching incredibly, and kind of reinforced the truth of the grounding. The truth of 3P became more true because it became true in my experience, as opposed to something that sounds good. But yeah.
Dominic, Bob's got his hand up.
Yeah, why don't we?
Bob, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Oh.
No, I apologize. Hi, guys. No, my hand was up when you guys were asking questions regarding who was coaching. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. That's all right.
No worries.
Dominic, can I share a bit of a story that I think fits with what you were saying there? I just finished some training. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. I'm going to be working in a nonprofit organization here in my hometown to help lift people out of poverty. And I'm going to be taking on a coaching role and a small group facilitation role. And it was a quite intense, 4.5 days, long days on the computer of training. And as I went through the days, I noticed that the harmony that was evident in what they were doing started to resonate with me more. So what I mean is, when I first started this training program, I was looking at it through my own bias. So I was looking at it through the lens of pure coaching. I was looking at it through the lens of the 3 principles. And I was noticing what was missing in the program. And then over the days as that went along, I started to see more and more how, wow, the stuff that they're doing works. And the stuff that they're doing is actually really aligned with 3P. Now, it's not 3P and it's not pure coaching. But the fact was that as I went through the days, I was able to drop my guard, as it were, and embrace all of the amazing things that these people were doing in form. So rather than looking at it through the eyes of a bias or through the eyes of a particular lens or opinion, I started to become more open to what they were doing. So instead of sort of sticking to my guns with, the 3P is all I need, or pure coaching is all I need, by opening up to the harmony of it, I think what I'm going to be able to bring to the table is an appreciation of what they're doing, a respect for what's already working for them in form, and then my own take on that. So I feel like that kind of fits in with where Dominic was going, that there's so much more to be gained from bringing things into harmony and respecting and appreciating what's working, rather than looking through the lens of, well, it's not this, it's not what I saw, therefore I'm going to question it. And I think that's a part of a lot of the motivation behind offering this program too. So I thought that would be a fitting moment to share that, Dom. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So many of you have, you're familiar with the coaching basics and more. There's lots of sort of talks there where I speak to various coaching principles, many of them International Coach Federation competencies in coaching. So would love to hear from anyone who has seen the benefit and how you've seen the benefit as you've harmonized with what are coaching principles as you've moved forward in coaching from a 3P grounding, or given your 3P understanding. So anything that you'd like to share about what benefits you've seen in the harmony?
And feel free to just unmute yourself, or if you're not comfortable, just into the chat box and we'll grab it from there.
Yes, just being less judgmental and more open to different perspectives. I think was really beneficial.
Great. Yeah. And Joanne?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm a former ACC ICF person. Then during my, I found the 3 principles when I was about to, continue. I needed to be recertified. And so it was, for me, it was either or. I was older and no one ever asked me if I was, ICF certified with the group of people that I coach with, which is more individual. And I just, I wanted to go 3Ps. But that's why I love the harmonization, because, and like Michael said, we put up our guard, and that's what I've been doing. And that's, just dropping that. I'm actually coaching right now an employee of ICF, because ICF is in my hometown, Lexington, Kentucky, their management. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really, that guard, just taking down the guard is huge. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my instructors, my main teacher, a woman named Hae Sun Moon, talks a lot about developing coaching fluency. And I think a lot of the resistance to pure coaching in the 3P community is because it's perceived as being techniques and by rote. Mm-hmm. And that may or may not be true, but it's certainly not the be all and end all of what pure coaching is. So getting past that, that technique, that rote, getting to the embodiment, getting to the openness that's available once you get it is tremendous. Yeah. It sounds like you've kind of come full circle with that, Joanne.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The that part about the so let's say a few things. The ACC, right? So by the way, in the ongoing, mentor coaching, we'll talk more about it later, but the mentor coaching and training that Michael and I are going to do or offer is sort of like getting yourself a mentor coach. And the intention of that is that it is all about your coaching, right? So that we'll get to that in a moment, but so it's about your coaching. It's coaching about your coaching, to help your coaching be more effective. So when you look at, and when we do that, by the way, we will be doing it in a way that is in harmony with the International Coach Federation, the International Coaching Federation definition of coaching and coaching competencies. And so, but now let's just talk about that for a second, because to some degree, what does that even matter? Right. So, and I kind of want to touch on that. So all that is, so for those of you that don't know, this thing called coaching is a relatively new profession. It is a relatively new modality. ICF itself is 25 years old, roughly. Okay, so as a profession, right? You can take a profession like law or medicine or something, and that'll go hundreds of years, right, of that. But when you take this, teaching as a profession, consulting as a profession, it's gone on for a long, 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 long time, right? So, but this coaching thing, which one is it could be like a profession. You could think of it like a profession. But the other distinction about it is it's almost like a distinction in communicating, interacting, relating to another person. And when I hear Estelle, in what Estelle's talked about, saying, oh, she's got a project or this interest that she is doing, and she wants to figure out how to sort of be with them in a particular way. Coaching has some distinctions about a way of being with other people, which is a little bit different than most anything we know. And I'm going to say, to some degree, is somewhat unnatural and rather paradoxical in just its stance, right? And completely harmonious. I'd say the most harmonious way of being from a 3P grounded perspective. A coaching stance, I would say, is the most aligned way of being and relating to another person is as a coach. In 3P, in the community, there are different professions or expressions of that. There is therapy, psychology, psychiatry, counseling, teaching. You can teach the 3 principles, facilitating the 3 principles. I'd say there's a lot of preaching of the 3 principles. Right? So there's many modalities with which you can interact with your family, with potential clients like that. And I would say that coaching, pure coaching, is the most harmonious, has the most integrity with a way of relating to other people if you were really grounded in what 3P is. Right? From that understanding that says there is innate wisdom in the other person. They are the potential and possibility of the universe. They are connected to infinite intelligence. They are an expression of mind. Right? From that understanding, a coaching stance, interacting with them from a coaching stance, to me has the most integrity and harmony as a way of interacting. If I take a teaching stance, for example, I'm assuming that I know something they do not, and that I can teach them, and that what I know that I can teach them. The part of the reason, if you want to be effective as a teacher, teaching is effective if it's not in the other person. So if you and I were, sitting here and you needed to figure out how to use Excel because you've got to crunch numbers and do a budget, believe me, I would not coach you. If I would simply teach you, because there is nothing inside of you to be evoked about an Excel spreadsheet and how to use it. And if I attempted to coach you to use Excel, in very shortly, you'd probably punch me because you'd be so frustrated as I start asking you questions like, well, as you look at that spreadsheet on your computer, where do you think the menu item might be to do such and such? And here's the thing, it's not in you. It's just not in you. Yeah. So what is far more effective is to teach you. I can teach you things that are not in you, right? But if I'm grounded in 3P and you're having a problem that you're trying to work out, and I really am grounded in 3P, then teaching, I would not be that tempted to do. But you see, the problem is I'd be stuck having to teach you if I couldn't coach. If I didn't have the skill of coaching, I kind of don't have many options. So I sit you down and I say, well, let me tell you something about how mind, thought, and consciousness work, because I think that's what your problem is. And I would attempt to teach you something. But again, really grounded in 3P, I would evoke it from you, and coaching is a way to do that with the skills and competencies of coaching. So,
yeah. Sorry, Dominic, just to add it, just to riff on that a little bit, I agree 100%, or I've come to agree with Dominic's assessment 100%, that the language of coaching or the modality of coaching is, in my opinion, the most respectful way that people can interact with one another from a place of being grounded in 3P. There's no need to teach or tell. If, you know, my language is quite simple. I think what I came to see is that we're all miracles. And if I'm sitting across from another miracle, what do I have to teach them? I mean, the answer is nothing. Excuse me, I could teach them how to use an Excel spreadsheet, but I don't have anything to teach them about their miraculousness. But could I use coaching skills to help a person see that for themselves? And I think the answer there is yes. And could I do that in a way that is respectful without assuming that I know more and they know less? Which I think is such a great equalizer in coaching. We do hold people as creative, resourceful, and whole. And there's an equalizing effect that has, in my experience, in conversation, rather than creating a gap that I now have to fill. We're on even footing, you know. I hope that resonates for people. I'm not quite as articulate. See, there you go. Not quite as articulate as Dominic is, but you know, that's ACC and MCC. So you're getting the best.
No, it isn't. It's what makes us a great team.
This is right. This is true. Thank you, Dom.
It's what makes us a great team. Yes.
Gil's got his hand up.
How are you? Come off mute.
Oh, did he get it?
Where did
Gil? Here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
You can hear me? Good.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got you.
Thank you both for being so articulate. And in the distinctions, Dominic, that you're making with coaching and teaching and counseling and everything, so where do you think Sydney Banks is in those distinctions?
I think that Sydney Banks is a spiritual teacher and an enlightened man.
Okay.
And I think he would be, say, like a Dalai Lama, like a Buddha,
okay.
like that. That's who Sydney Banks is. You can just come into his presence, including in a large group, and his presence can impact you.
So you would say he's teaching of the modalities, I guess, that he's not coaching.
He was not a coach,
right?
And he never purported to be a coach. He never worked with people like from a coaching perspective. Can
I interject real quick, Dominic? Sorry. Yeah. Gil, the way that I perceive Sid is as a share of his experience. He had an experience, he was enlightened, and he did his best to share that. I don't see him as having been teaching that. And that might be just the lens that I'm looking through it as. But I saw him as a sharer of, rather than any of the other modalities.
We had a very interesting way of communicating too. I mean, when I first saw his videos and listened to him, it was like, what the hell is he talking about? You know, and it was interesting for me that his way of communicating then made sense maybe weeks or even months after I originally heard them. And also there was and I wondered if there was a way I could learn how to do that, you know? Yeah.
Become enlightened.
Well, see, so
are you offering a course on that? So
yeah, that'll be our next course.
Next one
is the harmony between enlightenment. But Gil, there is so this kind of goes to the coaching and competencies and that kind of thing. So there is, and it could be worth explaining that. So what a lot of people react to who like us, once they kind of come across principles and stuff, is what they react to about coaching is sort of more lower competency, lower skillfulness in coaching, because it looks more robotic, more process oriented. And so then they kind of go, oh my God, that's terrible. What? That's like scripted or something. It's like it it looks a certain way. And so from a 3P perspective, they kind of cringe, right? But just to be clear, what I've come to see is that what the ICF defines as coaching and what pure coaching is, in the end state, is powered by presence. So the direction that ICF points is to a coach making a difference with another person. Almost purely by presence, only by space, presence, where in an interaction with another, you can impact them. That would be the closest thing to, let's say, where Sydney Banks was. That simply in that presence, something could happen to you. Now, how do you get there, right? There's a few things from coaching that start to get distinguished. They start to, and I don't like to say, but it almost is that they begin like rules. Now, I kind of joke about this because I do this kind of training of leaders and managers to be coaches. And the way I do it with them, and many of you know of my sense of humor, I'll often train and I'll say, look, there are rules. You must learn the rules, right? Mostly these managers are like, have no interest in coaching, right? That's sort of not what they signed up for. But the idea is, and kind of what I sell, is that you can be a great coach rather than a good boss. So if you be a great coach rather than a good boss, you can bring out potential in people and then their performance is better, right? So that's kind of the angle of that. But they start off, right, at sort of the beginning saying, this is a waste of time. I don't understand why we're even doing this, right? Because I'll say, you need to be with your employee and what you do is you have to ask them what they want. Why should I ask them what they want? They have a job to do. I already know what they should do. Like, it's just back up. It's like, of course they have a job to do, but they have a job to do, but it's their own development. So they need to learn certain principles like, and we'll call it rules. Like, if this is a coaching conversation, who owns the agenda? Who is leading this conversation? And this is where ICF is so great, right? Because ICF builds in competencies and a code of ethics even that says, if you claim to be coaching, you, coach, will be on that person's agenda and you will be agenda free. Now that gets tricky because I'm trying to teach them the principles. I already know what their problem is. They're having problems in relationships because they don't understand mind, thought, and consciousness. And you say, well, that's not coaching. Then you're doing something else, right? Because if you are coaching, you will be on their agenda. They will direct this conversation and they will tell you where this conversation will go. So what happens is that based on some, now, by the way, you kind of think, oh, well, I don't like that at all. Don't be giving me any rules. Because if I understand, there are no rules, right?
Who needs rules? Yeah.
It's potential impossibility of the universe. Stop putting rules on me, right? But here's the thing. If you were grounded in 3P and that person over there was the potential impossibility of the universe, and they were having a conversation with you for some sort of help, or I don't know, however you'd call it, then how would you be with them? How could you possibly lead a conversation like that? What are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that your innate wisdom is stronger than their innate wisdom? Are you suggesting that your innate wisdom is what they need? So a coaching principle, which starts as a rule, as you look at it, you go, oh my God, that is actually in harmony with a very strong grounding in the three principles. But see, now what happens though is, well, now I'm stuck, because if I start to interact with that, it's like I have my hands tied behind my back. What the hell am I supposed to do with this person if I got to be on their agenda? Like, now what? How do we get anywhere? Now I got to rely on them. Notice your grounding, how off, because they're not that wise. I'm way more wise than they are. I've understood the principles for way more. They wouldn't be spinning around like that if they understood what I understood, right? So the whole interaction starts to shift. And why is it shifting? Because your grounding is off. Your grounding is off. But we start by saying, no, I don't want to follow rules. Because if I am in pure presence, I'll just know what to do and I'll know what to say. Maybe, or more than likely, you will follow your habits of behavior that have been well practiced over the course of your lifetime. And if you don't believe me, we'll ask your significant other.
So true.
And so that's kind of what happens. So then what happens is ICF and training starts to, in a way, give you these restrictions and guardrails, which it's not, and this is what's confusing. So to get an ACC, you're sort of like understanding these rules. And, you know, when Joanne got hers, what they did is they would have seen her do a conversation and they would have watched her not lead the client, not steer the conversation, and she could skillfully do that in a way. Now, when you read the requirements, they allow you to cheat here and there, and they even allow you to do it robotically. They just, in the end, want to make sure that do you understand what the difference is between coaching versus teaching versus consulting and advising and all that, and can you get it? And so Joanne would have led a conversation like that, and they would have said, okay, she got it, like, fine. And it doesn't matter if it's clunky or not, but just the fact that you know what the boundaries are. But then you move up, and then there's professional certified coach. And then I learned the hard way what ACC or MCC was. So in professional certified coach, they start to, no, you can't use scripts. No, you can't use your canned questions. You need to be in this conversation. These questions need to arise from the conversation. It's a whole other skill level, right? So that's kind of another level of credential. And then there comes MCC, where I believed, this is so embarrassing, but so I thought I had ACC. And then after many, hours of coaching practice, I submitted and I got my PCC, professional certified coach. And, I, for years, sort of did coaching. And then I thought I could submit my application for a master certified coach credential, and they would fall all over themselves to grant it to me. Because I thought,
how'd that work out?
They just need to see my coaching. I have all the logged hours, right? And I discovered that that's a whole other thing. And this is where I discovered now where pure coaching is most in harmony with three principles. Because at this point, it was like everything I knew, my mentor coach, was just horrible. Dude, you don't know the number of times I was like, I don't need this. I don't need this BS. I already know how to coach. I've got lots of clients. They think I'm amazing. And I don't need her telling me. But the coach was basically all out of, no, you're too involved. You're too in the conversation. You're inputting too much. What do you mean I'm input? Like, it was basically kept moving in the direction of presence, pure presence. You are, and she would use terms like, your job is to create a spaciousness in this conversation. Like, what is that? Spaciousness, they won't see how brilliant I am. If I create spaciousness, they don't see any of my brilliance, right? And so it just kept, basically, as you move to more and more mastery and coaching, what happens, what I would say is the coach disappears. Yeah. Mastery and coaching, the coach disappears and the client shows up, right? And that's what happens in that kind of a conversation. At that point, Gil, it would be the closest thing you could see to a really strong grounding in 3P. And maybe what Sid was doing was just out of a pure presence, people showed up and came into their full potential. For you and I, it can take a bit of a journey.
Well, what does he say? One thought away, but it might take a few.
Might take a little bit of a journey to get to such a state, but
yeah, it really is. So, Bob, is that a hand up, or is that?
that is just a comment and maybe perhaps for some conversation.
Yeah, go for it, man.
It's really interesting that there are so many people that just have this innate ability to coach, and without the credentials, they just have this ability to bring out the best in people, to motivate, to see that where they are in life is for a purpose. They're, guide them, and it's unfortunate, but what I'm really fascinated about is that these people do it because they want to do it. They don't do it because they want to be accredited. They don't do it because they're trying to make money. They do it because they're making a difference. And I think that's what really coaching is about, making that difference and doing it because we want to do it. But this whole being accredited, it seems a little off balance. There's a group of people at the top who say, you need to be accredited in order to get a job to do this. Yet there are so many people that already have the skills to do this.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So let's be clear for everybody here. Although we're teaching from that perspective, like in our mentoring and teaching, we are grounding in that perspective. Whether or not anyone's interested in credentials is a whole other conversation, right? Yeah. So do you need credentials? Joanne realized she didn't. Others will as well. Like in the beginning, if I go back the 10 years, no one even asked, right? So I got my ICF credential, but no one even asked. So it depends. The credential is a different conversation, but my coaching effectiveness is separate from the credential. There's some parallel to both, in terms of following the path of that. But to Bob's point, if you follow the path of it in order to get a credential, you're going to be off right away. Yeah. The real Bob's point that is powerful for me is you only be interested in making more and more of a difference with people. If you're interested in that is a worthwhile way. You will focus on your coaching. You will focus on becoming more effective in your coaching. And that credential path or the competencies with it is a very good way to do it, because thousands of people who practice coaching throughout the world, including really, really good ones, have come together to give some words and form to what this modality is. And that's now ACC. Go ahead, Michael.
Sorry, Dominic. And I was just going to add to that, and specifically also what coaching is not.
Yes.
Right. Like
yes. So, and that'll be important with the credential. So the credential, again, if you're dealing with individuals one-to-one, if you're dealing with entrepreneurs, a real estate agent, salesperson, someone with a company, another coach, like different, So most will not be looking for a credential, right? In some cases, having the credential, if they happen to know anything about it, they'll just kind of say, oh, okay, well, at least you are trained and whatever, who knows if they think that or not. Where a credential becomes, 10 years ago, no one was asking. Go 5 years ago, you started to see more of it. Today, there are entire organizations that there is no way you could coach inside that organization. A lot of my clients who are, large multinational financial services companies, conglomerates like that, there is no way you could coach in there without a credential. And part of the reason for this is because the system within it, which you take HR and all of that, they don't know what coaching is. So they have no idea what coaching is, right? So they're trainers, they're doing all that stuff. And so now, the CFO needs a coach, the CEO needs a coach, the VP of such and such needs a coach. Well, how the hell do you find a coach? I mean, some guy says they're a coach. Mary says she's a coach. I mean, do we present her? I don't know, right? And I don't know, we could, I guess, check references and all that. But how do you do that systematically? Like, how would I know, even if I check these references? Just don't know what they're doing. And by the way, part of the other problem is, and when I was in an organization in HR, is that you start to bring people in who are amazing. This amazing salesperson, an amazing whatever, and they are a sales coach, right? And then they come in and they're like, I don't know what that person was doing. Or our types, more spiritually grounded, right? You bring them in and it's like, I don't know, that person was checking my aura and they said something about like, and so HR just needs to hear a little bit of that before they kind of go, what the hell is going on, right? From now on, we're checking credentials because we got to know if people actually know what they're doing or not. And so credentials a shortcut. That's all. It's just a shortcut. Yeah. It's like, and that's, yeah.
If I can speak to that real quick. So from the ACC perspective, the reason I chose to pursue it is because I'm called to coach. It's a vocation for me. So for me, it was about getting a structured education in what coaching is. It wasn't so much about the credential, although I think that 5-10 years from now, it's going to be critical to have a credential if you want to work in organizations, if anyone does. But it was about the structure that gave me. Right. It was, it was like going to school to become a teacher or a carpenter or any other skill that we value and have in our society. Why not also learn the skills of coaching from a structured system? I don't have to do the accreditation. But as Jesse Lynn mentioned earlier, there's a significant difference between 3P facilitator coach training and pure coach training. They are quite distinct from one another. So for me, the benefit of it, at the ACC level was the structure, the education, that they're really getting clear on what coaching is and what it is not. So for me, I found the more I came to understand what it is, the more gently I could bend rules when it was appropriate to do so and know that I was doing that. Right. So I could take the coaching hat off, ask for permission to inject a piece of information. So I can do that deliberately rather than fluking into that and then having the conversation fall apart.
That by the way, is excellent. That last part in there, which is sort of once you know the distinctions, you're no longer bound by them. So if you know the distinction, because here's the truth, there actually are no rules, right? So there actually are no rules. Now that's sort of the big joke when I'm training the managers, because when I work with leaders and managers, I do that. Look, there are rules. You got to follow the rules. And if you follow the rules, after you do that and you actually show that you can do that, you can lead a conversation staying on their agenda, not steer them off to your solution, right? If you show me you can do that, okay, Now let's have a conversation about how you throw these rules out. like now that you actually have the skill to do it, now let's have the conversation about how do you break the rules. And this was then a very important distinction. If you don't understand the rules, why the rules are there, why that competency is the way that it is, and I'm in my MCC is where most became clear, had not become clear before that. But there are implications to every rule you break, because there is a reason it is there. And when you break it, there's a consequence. And you don't realize it, except you will realize it as time goes on. So you start to do minor things like, oh, you know, I'm going to give them this answer. I'm going to give them a bit of advice. Something as simple as I'm going to interrupt the client. Simple little things like this, that all of this communicates something. You are communicating something beyond these words, beyond what you're doing. You are impacting the relationship. There is a very clear message that one of you knows more than the other. There's a very clear message happening in this space that one of you is wiser than the other. So there is an implication that starts to happen, and you don't realize that it does because it seems so minor, right? And I didn't know there was a rule. I had no idea there was a rule. And so, but that the reason the distinction is there in the first place is it's grounded in something really, 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 really important about the way this interaction goes. And when you get started on the journey, you are so clunky that the way you do it is very awkward. It's like you're using training wheels. Oh, they told me that I'm not allowed to tell anything and I can only ask questions. And so it's this clunky little rule that you seem to be following, except there is a reason behind it. There is some reason it's grounded in. And what you find is that what grounds it in pure coaching is the truth we know from the three principles. There is a harmony amongst these things. And what was discovered in three principles about human beings, there are people who have taken it into the application of what a conversation is like and how an interaction is. If you really were grounded in the truth of 3P, this is what it looks like in form, right? And so that is the benefit, the advantage of sort of harmonizing pure coaching, mastery of coaching, with a strong grounding in 3P, and it will make you way more effective than any other coach. Is the combination.
The grounding is almost a secret weapon, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I know we have to close, and what we'll do is I'm going to give you a link to what Michael and I are doing. Is that we've started a mentor coaching training program. So it's a way to work with, instead of hiring one coach to work with you, mentor coaching, the way I was doing when I was on my master coaching path, is it's done in groups, and there's many advantages to that. I had a group coaching component. So did you, Michael. I think in your, you did a group coaching component.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Credential as well.
Yep.
And it's much easier, richer, because then you can see other styles and approaches, because that'll help eliminate the pitfall of sometimes you get on this path and you think that there's like one way to coach. Okay, they're going to teach me the way to coach. No, unfortunately. No, there is none. It is, you will be a very unique coach, right? Otherwise it'll be inauthentic. But so part of when it's done in groups is that helps that way. So this mentor coaching, It's intended for people who are coaching, and it is to provide like a mentoring or support to you in your coaching to become better at it. So twice a month we'll connect, and we do it in groups. The 2 sessions each month, one session has more of, and this isn't pure really, we're going to mix, but they'll have these 2 components. One will have more of a mentor teaching component, mentor teaching training component. We're going to pull up, some ICF competency like listens actively or maintains presence. We'll pull it up. We'll see their descriptor so that we'll understand it. So there's a little bit of that. And then the other part is going to be practicing, right? So now following this idea or principle, practicing. We will do coaching where you will coach, you will be coached in there as well. But the other part you'll do is you'll bring your actual coaching challenges.
Yeah.
Right. So these are real situations. I worked with a client last week and, all of a sudden they got all defensive, or I find I get to this same place all the time. And it's just, the clients are resistant. It's almost like they're debating me. Right. See, you bring that into mentor coaching, and here's what we're going to do. Instead of saying to you, oh, yeah, you know what you should do instead?
Here's what you need to do.
You should do this, right? What we're going to do is say, that is interesting to note, right? What is it that creates defensiveness? Because it will always be about breaching a principle. So we'll say, so you're noticing that in your coaching. So let's talk about this. And what we will find is a principle which has been breached or altered in some way. See, once you know the principle, you will know it not just for that reason, you will know it as impacting your coaching everywhere. So we're not gonna, just sort of give you a technique. Oh, why don't you try this question? This question I think is much better.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
that isn't it. What we'll do is we'll say, well, what went on there that the conversation spun out?
Yeah, how is it that you ended up in this spot facing this challenge?
Yes.
And just to talk really quick to Bob, that's one of the huge things that I saw doing formal training. It's like the ability to recognize not only that you're fallen off the cliff, but you can look back and say, that's what I did while I was coaching this person that brought us to the point. And that's been invaluable, really, really helpful.
Awesome. And as a bonus, there will also be a private session each month. Yes. So, and Michael Fall will do a coaching session with you each month as well. And so that it's a coaching session. It's obviously on your agenda, and it's really cool because as the 2 of us are someone earlier on the coaching journey and someone later on the coaching journey. And so there's sort of that, I think that there's some benefit to that sort of spread between us as well. So, and one more thing that we spoke about, which you can do in the mentor coaching as well, is you can also bring, and we will set up the structure for this, but you can bring recorded sessions. And so we would do these only one at a time, of course. And so if you want, you can take, and we'll give you the guidelines with your client to, for confidentiality and stuff, but where you can do a recorded coaching session with a client and then bring it in. And then what we can do is we can work with that for our learning, as well as you'll get much richer feedback in terms of your own coaching as well. So that can be in there. And the other thing we didn't mention is that we'll also work with guest speakers. We both are familiar with a lot of really, really well qualified coaches who are very effective, who we'll bring in both 3P and non 3P. Right? Mm-hmm. So both sides. So you'll be able to, and we'll have to warn the non-3P people what they're coming into. So, so be easy on them. Yes. So that I just wanted to make sure we're complete because we were set for the hour. I'm willing to stay on. Michael, are you okay if there's questions to answer or anything? I mean, I'm willing to stay on for that. Otherwise, we do want to thank you for your participation. And so if anyone has to drop off or whatever, we appreciate you joining us here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
For those of you that have to go,
yeah.
See you soon, hopefully. And I can stay for a bit, Dominic.
And why don't I pause and stop the recording, and then we can continue on with Q&A.
Cool.
All right.